Imagine a young man barely out of his teenage years, standing at the edge of known civilization, his eyes blazing with an ambition so fierce it would reshape the world forever. This is not just another tale of conquest and glory. This is the raw, unfiltered story of how one person's burning desire to touch the stars nearly succeeded in doing exactly that. If you're ready to dive deep into one of history's most mind-bending stories, hit that like button right now and subscribe for more incredible historical adventures that will change how you see the world. Long before Alexander ever drew his first breath, the stage was being set for something extraordinary. Ancient Greece wasn't just a collection of pretty marble columns and philosophical debates. It was a powder keg of innovation, warfare, and raw human ambition. Two cities stood like giants above all others. Athens, where brilliant minds crafted democracy and art, while their navy ruled the waves, and Sparta, where children learned to fight before they could properly walk. When the mighty Persian Empire came knocking in 480 BC, these bitter rivals did something nobody expected. They joined forces. At a narrow mountain pass called Thermopylae, 300 Spartan warriors and their allies faced down an army so massive it supposedly drank rivers dry. For 3 days they held the line until betrayal led to their destruction. Yet their sacrifice sparked something greater, a Greek victory that sent the Persians retreating with their tails between their legs. But success breeds conflict. Athens and Sparta couldn't share the same sky, and their rivalry exploded into decades of devastating warfare that left the Greek world bleeding and broken. As these great cities tore each other apart, nobody noticed the quiet kingdom in the north growing stronger, deadlier, and more ambitious with each passing year. The rise of the forgotten kingdom. Macedonia was the place sophisticated Greeks looked down their noses at, a rough, mountainous land filled with people they barely considered Greek at all. But King Philip II had other plans. This wasn't just another tribal chieftain looking to make a name for himself. Philip was a military genius who understood that the future belonged to whoever could perfect the art of war. His masterpiece was the sarissa, an 18-foot spear that completely changed how battles were fought. Picture thousands of these weapons moving as one, creating a forest of deadly points that could punch through any enemy formation. When Philip's new army met the combined forces of Athens and Thebes at Cheronea in 308 BC, it wasn't even close. The age of independent Greek city-states died that day, replaced by Macedonian dominance. Philip dreamed bigger than just controlling Greece. He wanted to lead all Greeks in a grand campaign against their old enemy Persia. The Persian Empire was still incredibly wealthy, but it had grown soft and corrupt. The time seemed perfect for revenge. But on the very eve of launching his great war, Philip was murdered by his own bodyguard, a victim of the deadly court politics that plagued Macedonia. Enter Alexander, 20 years old, brilliant beyond his years, and carrying the weight of his father's dreams on his shoulders. This wasn't some pampered prince playing at being a soldier. Alexander had been tutored by Aristotle himself and had already proven his worth as a military commander. But inheriting a throne in Macedonia meant fighting for your life from day one. Alexander's first move showed exactly what kind of ruler he would become. He had potential rivals, executed without mercy, crushed rebellions across his territories, and made a statement that echoed across the ancient world when he completely destroyed the ancient city of Thebes. Every man, woman, and child was either killed or sold into slavery. The message was clear: cross Alexander at your own peril. In 334 BC, Alexander finally launched his father's delayed war against Persia. But this would become something far greater than Philip had ever imagined. This would become a campaign to conquer the world itself. Alexander's army was a masterpiece of military engineering. 40,000 men drawn from across Greece, each with a specific role to play in what would become history's most successful war machine. The corps was formed by 9,000 Macedonian phalangites, professional soldiers who lived, breathed, and dreamed of those 18-foot sarissas. When they formed up for battle 16 ranks deep, they created a wall of iron-tipped death that could smash through almost anything. But Alexander understood that even the best heavy infantry needed support. Elite hypaspists guarded the flanks of the phalanx, while Greek allies and mercenaries provided depth. Skilled javelin throwers from distant mountains served as skirmishers, and various cavalry units provided mobility and shock power. The crown jewel of this force was the companion cavalry, 1,800 of the finest horsemen in the world, commanded by Alexander himself. These weren't just soldiers following orders, they were brothers in arms who would follow their king into the gates of hell if he asked them to. The first test came at the Granicus River, where Persian satraps had gathered their forces to stop the invasion before it could truly begin. The Persians held a strong position behind the river, with their cavalry forming the front line and Greek mercenaries held in reserve. It should have been an easy defensive victory. Alexander had other ideas. Against all tactical wisdom, he ordered an immediate assault across the river in broad daylight. This wasn't reckless courage. It was calculated madness designed to achieve maximum shock. As his men struggled across the water under a hail of arrows and javelins, Alexander himself led from the front, fighting like a man possessed. The young king's helmet was split by a Persian sword, and he came within inches of death when two enemy nobles attacked him simultaneously. Only the quick action of his bodyguard saved his life, but Alexander's desperate assault had achieved its purpose. While the Persians focused on stopping his crossing, the rest of his army made it across and formed up. What followed was slaughter. The Persian cavalry broke and fled, leaving their Greek mercenaries isolated and helpless. Alexander, possibly in a blood rage, refused to accept their surrender and had them massacred to the last man. Asia Minor lay open before him. 18 months later, Alexander faced his greatest test yet. King Darius III himself had taken the field with the main Persian army, determined to trap and destroy the upstart Macedonian. The two armies met at Issus, in a narrow coastal plain that prevented Darius from using his massive numerical advantage. This battle would determine the fate of empires. Darius commanded up to 100,000 men, including his elite immortals and the finest cavalry and infantry from across his vast territories. Alexander was heavily outnumbered, but he had something Darius lacked: absolute confidence in victory and the ability to inspire that same confidence in his men. The battle began with Alexander's trademark aggressive assault on the right wing. But this time, things went wrong. The Macedonian phalanx, trying to keep up with their king's advance, lost formation and found itself being pushed back by Darius's Greek mercenaries. For a moment, it looked like the Persian king might achieve the impossible. Alexander saw the danger and reacted with typical decisiveness. Gathering his companion cavalry, he launched a desperate charge straight at the Persian center, fighting his way toward Darius himself. The sight of this young Macedonian king, apparently fearless and unstoppable, proved too much for the Persian monarch. Darius fled the battlefield in his royal chariot, and his army collapsed around him. The victory at Issus didn't just defeat a Persian army. It shattered the myth of Persian invincibility and established Alexander as a legitimate claimant to the Persian throne. With the Persian field army destroyed, Alexander could have been content with his conquests. Instead, he pushed deeper into Persian territory, systematically capturing the empire's most important strongholds. The siege of Tyre became legendary, a 7-month struggle that saw Alexander build a causeway to the island city and deploy massive siege towers against its walls. But perhaps the most significant moment of this period came in Egypt, where Alexander was welcomed as a liberator from Persian rule and crowned as pharaoh. His journey to the desert oracle of Siwa changed everything. According to some accounts, the priests there declared him the son of Amun, king of the gods. Whether Alexander believed this divine proclamation or simply used it for political purposes, it marked a turning point in his character and ambitions. When Darius offered him half the Persian Empire, a fortune in gold, and his daughter's hand in marriage in exchange for peace, Alexander's response revealed just how far his ambitions had grown. He didn't want half an empire. He was coming to take it all. The decisive confrontation came at Gaugamela, near modern-day Iraq, where Darius assembled every soldier he could muster for one last desperate throw of the dice. The Persian king had chosen open ground where his numerical superiority would be most effective, and had even cleared and flattened the battlefield to make it perfect for his war chariots and cavalry. Alexander faced odds that would have terrified any rational commander. The Persian army may have been twice the size of his own, with contingents from across the known world, cavalry from India and Central Asia, infantry from Syria and Babylonia, deadly scythe chariots, and even war elephants. But Alexander had learned to turn apparent disadvantages into opportunities. His seemingly reckless advance to the right drew Persian troops away from their center, weakening exactly where he planned to strike. When Darius unleashed his feared chariots, Alexander's skirmishers picked off the crews, while his infantry simply opened lanes and let the vehicles pass harmlessly through. The climactic moment came when Alexander led his companions in a thunderous charge straight at the weakened Persian center. The speed and ferocity of the assault threw the Persians into complete panic. Once again, Darius fled the battlefield, and with him went the last hope of organized Persian resistance. The road to Babylon now lay open, and Alexander entered the ancient city in triumph. At Susa, he ceremonially took his seat upon the royal throne of Persia, symbolically claiming dominion over the greatest empire the world had ever known. When a courageous Persian force made a final stand at the Persian gates, Alexander found a way around their position and wiped them out. At Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of the Persian Empire, Alexander made a decision that revealed both his political genius and his ruthless pragmatism. Despite wanting to appear as a legitimate successor to Darius, he ordered the great palace complex burned as retribution for the Persian invasion of Greece 150 years earlier. The message was clear: old scores would be settled, but under Alexander's terms. With Darius dead, murdered by his own governor Bessus, Alexander could have been satisfied with ruling the greatest empire in history. Instead, he pushed east into the mountains of Afghanistan and Central Asia, pursuing not just the usurper Bessus, but something far more elusive: the edge of the world itself. This eastern campaign revealed both Alexander's military genius and his growing detachment from reality. He founded cities bearing his name across the region, crushed rebellions with characteristic ruthlessness, and defeated nomadic tribes that had never been conquered. But he also began adopting Persian customs and dress, alienating his own men who saw these changes as betrayals of their Greek heritage. The breaking point came when Alexander tried to force his Macedonian officers to perform the Persian ritual of prostration before the king. To Greeks, this was blasphemy. Only gods deserved such worship. Alexander was forced to back down, but the damage to his relationship with his men had been done. Paranoia began to consume the king. When plots against his life were discovered, Alexander's responses grew increasingly brutal. He had longtime friends and companions executed on sometimes questionable evidence. The man who had saved his life at the Granicus, Clytus the Black, was killed by Alexander's own hand during a drunken argument. Alexander's final great campaign took him across the Hindu Kush mountains into India, where he faced challenges unlike any he had encountered before. The local rulers fought with war elephants, massive beasts that terrified his horses and could trample infantry formations. At the Battle of the Hydaspes, Alexander won perhaps his most tactically brilliant victory, but at a terrible cost in casualties. Still, Alexander pushed on, driven by ancient Greek beliefs that somewhere beyond India lay the great river that marked the edge of the world. He was so close to achieving the impossible, becoming master of everything that existed. But at the river Hyphasis, the unthinkable happened. His army mutinied. These men who had followed him across continents, fought impossible battles, and helped him conquer the known world, finally said enough. They had been away from home for 8 years, had fought countless battles, and had heard terrifying rumors of the massive armies waiting deeper in India. Alexander was furious, but for the first time in his career, he had to retreat. The journey back to Persia nearly killed him and his army. While crossing the Gedrosian desert, extreme heat and lack of water led to terrible suffering and death. The man who had conquered the world was defeated by geography itself. Alexander's final years revealed the true cost of his impossible ambitions. Back in Persia, he executed several governors who had abused their power during his absence and arranged mass marriages between his officers and Persian noblewomen to bind his empire together. But his increasingly erratic behavior and apparent preference for Persian advisors over his old Macedonian companions led to another mutiny. The death of his closest friend, Hephaestion from Phoebus devastated Alexander completely. He went days without eating and ordered empire-wide mourning. Some historians believe this loss pushed him over the edge into complete megalomania. Planning yet another campaign, this time to conquer Arabia and perhaps even the Western Mediterranean, Alexander developed a sudden fever in Babylon. Within days, he was dead at age 32. The cause remains one of history's great mysteries. Was it malaria, poison, divine retribution for his hubris? Alexander died having achieved the impossible, conquering most of the known world in just 13 years. But his empire was held together by nothing more than his own personality and reputation. Without clear succession plans, his generals immediately began fighting among themselves. In the brutal wars of the successors that followed, Alexander's wife Roxana and infant son were murdered. His golden sarcophagus, originally destined for Macedonia, was hijacked and ended up in Alexandria, Egypt, where its location remains unknown to this day. Yet Alexander's impact on world history cannot be overstated. His conquests spread Greek culture across 3 continents, creating the Hellenistic world that would dominate the ancient Mediterranean for centuries. Cities he founded became centers of learning and commerce. The fusion of Greek, Persian, and local traditions in his former territories led to revolutionary developments in art, science, philosophy, and government. Most remarkably, Alexander achieved all this while never losing a single battle. His tactical genius, personal courage, and ability to inspire absolute loyalty in his men made him perhaps the greatest military commander who ever lived. But his story also serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unlimited ambition and the price of trying to become more than human. Alexander the Great didn't just conquer the world. He showed that, with enough vision, courage, and ruthless determination, even the impossible becomes achievable. His legacy reminds us that ordinary people can accomplish extraordinary things, but also that the pursuit of godhood often destroys those who attempt it. If this incredible journey through one of history's most amazing lives has blown your mind, show some love by hitting that like button, subscribing to our channel, and sharing this video with anyone who loves epic historical adventures. There are so many more incredible stories waiting to be told, and we can't wait to share them with you. What historical figure should we explore next? Let us know in the comments below.